Hey guys, Bowler here. The Super Smash Flash Iceberg is finally here. I've been cooking this video for almost a year now, collecting scraps of random trivia and old development lore, especially with the help of some of these Super Smash Flash lore masters. I want to give a huge, massive shout out to Crazy Knot. He practically runs the SSF2 wiki at this point, and knows about everything there is to know about Super Smash Flash. And combined with my own experience of being in the community for about 10 years at this point, which is actually insane to think about. I've been making videos for almost 10 years. I have finally finished compiling the definitive Super Smash Flash 2 Iceberg. And if you've never seen an Iceberg video, basically we're starting out by talking about a lot of the surface level parts of Smash Flash and slowly working our way towards some very obscure and even strange fun facts about the game's development. So whether you're a Smash Flash veteran or clicked on this video on accident, let's dive into the Super Smash Flash 2 Iceberg. First off, Layer 1, which contains the basic core identity of Super Smash Flash: computer labs. Computer labs are the single most important thing in Super Smash Flash history. No, seriously, if you never played SSF2 locally with your friends at a computer lab, then you just missed out. Computer labs were the lifeblood of SSF2. It was pretty much the best Flash game on unblocked websites, although I did like block stores a lot too, but it was definitely one of the best multiplayer Flash games that everyone wanted to play. I mean, it was just Smash Bros with anime characters for free. And if it wasn't for computer labs, this game would not have been nearly as popular as it is. And honestly, it's kind of sad to see that since Adobe Flash just isn't really supported anymore, kids these days just aren't going to experience the peak that was playing Super Smash Flash locally, which sucks because that's what made me and so many other people fans of the game in the first place. Super Smash Flash 1. Without this game, we wouldn't even have the sequel. Hell, we wouldn't even have Framemakers either. Funny enough, a lot of people who are fans of SSF2 have never even played or even know what the first game is about. The sequel is just that much more popular. And in my opinion, kind of rightfully so. The original is oozing with nostalgia for the older generation of Smash Flash fans, and although it has some charm, it definitely has some major flaws. And I do mean major flaws. If you take off the rose-tinted glasses, the game has a lot of functional issues, the most obvious one being that the camera only follows player 1. But Mr. Incredible, Kirby and Meta Knight being a transformation character, no shields, no grabs, Rivals of Ether style, and the OC Sonic characters all give this game a very unique identity. It is an all-time classic, even if it's a little bit janky. And the developers decided that inside Super Smash Flash 2, they were going to actually celebrate 10 years of Super Smash Flash by making an SSF1 mode in Super Smash Flash 2, which basically just tries to replicate the same janky physics that the original had, and it's fun for a couple games, but yeah, it's still pretty janky. But my favorite reference to the original game is actually the 2019 April Fool's announcement, which was Super Smash Flash 1 HD, which gave a taste of what it would be like if there was an official Super Smash Flash 2 Knuckles, which honestly I'm still hoping one day can actually become a reality. Unlockable stages. Back in the day, we used to have unlockable fighters, but now it's just unlockable stages. In fact, some of the most popular stages, such as Waiting Room and World Tournament, can only be accessed through being unlocked. But there's also some very secret and kind of weird unlockable stages, such as Devil's Machine. What the hell even is this stage? The disorienting background, the eerie messages, the disturbing music, and of course the most ominous unlock method in the entire Smash franchise. To unlock this stage, you need to pick the Ghost Nest costume and then Roblox yourself 3 times in a match. Why? Well, it's probably a reference to Earthbound, but Jesus Christ, if you are a new player, how do you even find this stage on your own? To be honest though, the creepy atmosphere and weird unlock method actually do give this stage a lot of charm, and I actually do like that it's in the game for that reason. It's like an old playground rumor if it was actually real. MG Insiders. So, McLeod Gaming Insiders, or MG Insiders for short, some of you might have already forgotten what this was. It was a fairly popular program back in 2020, and the original point of the program was essentially an email sign up where you could put your email in and then get news and information about the newest Super Smash Flash 2 updates as soon as they come out. And back in 2020, this was the golden era of Super Smash Flash updates. We were getting big content updates every 2 months, adding new costumes, stages, and even eventually Ganondorf. And during 2020, MG Insiders was actually pretty useful and used by McLeod Gaming, and these days, it's pretty much forgotten about. It hasn't been used in years, and considering the development of the game has slowed down significantly, it seems unlikely that we'll ever see MG Insiders return. It's sort of a relic of that golden era. Transformation Final Smashes. Despite these being gone from the game for almost 8 years, these are still some of the most iconic and popular features to ever be in the game. And it's very clear why. They were fun as we had Wario Man, Super Sonic, Ninetales Naruto, Super Saiyan Goku, and a plethora of other unique ones like this Mega Man one that all had unique movesets. It was honestly a lot more fun and satisfying to use completely new characters rather than just the cinematic Final Smashes, but considering it was an entire new character with a unique moveset, it's understandable why for development purposes, the devs moved away from these Final Smashes and took them all out of the game. And to this day, many players still want to see them return. They're deeply rooted in the game's identity. For example, the most viewed Super Smash Bros. 2 video ever was just showing off the Transformation Final Smashes. So people clearly do love them, and it's sad to see that they're gone. And the last on this layer is the McLeod Gaming forums. The MG forums are an absolute relic for SSF2 historians. On one hand, it's a little cringy to look back at how we acted in 2015, but it's also very charming to see what our community was like back then. It was honestly a very small, tight-knit, kind of grassroots community who just loved playing a Smash Bros. Fan game. We had people straight up making their own SSF2 player cards and unique signatures, and there was always at least one guy in their signature who would say that every character was their main. These days, the community is basically only on Discord, but back then, this was a core part of the game's history. You would see the most out-of-pocket statements for no reason. Like right next to sick combo clips, you would see the most insane beef, speculation, and just random community drama. For me and the other old school players, this was the home of Super Smash Flash back in the day, and it is sad to see that the forums have since been shut down and closed indefinitely. Level 2. Now we're getting into the references and more obscure trivia that some players know but many also don't. Urban Champion. Urban Champion is another one of those secret unlockable stages in SSF2, but unlike Devil's Machine, this one is talked about significantly less because a lot less people even know it exists. And the reason for that is because when it was added to the game, nobody knew. It wasn't in the patch notes, and nobody even knew it was in the game until data miners found it in the files after a couple days. Even I didn't know it was in the game, so I made a video talking about the update that didn't include it, so I had to make a follow-up video going, hey, there was actually a secret update. The unlock method was also pretty obscure. You have to get a certain score in classic mode, and also the stage itself, in my opinion, is a great addition, which is why it kind of sucks that it's so secretive. It's based on the NES game called Urban Champion, and the stage itself has a lot of cool, unique mechanics. When people die on the side blast zones, the stage actually transitions horizontally, and the Hazards On version has these cool little potted plants that get thrown out the windows. Which is why this stage, in my opinion, deserves to be here, as it is a quite notoriously secret stage, and the Shadow Drop update was a legendary moment. Pink Gold Peach. Pink Gold Peach, the GOAT Mario Kart character. Okay, not really, but I do think, I know it's kind of cool that she is referenced in SSF2. If you didn't know, the devs made it so if you pick up the metal box as Peach, you get Pink Gold Peach, which is a pretty cool reference. There's really not much else to say about this one, but yeah, just an Easter egg that a lot of people didn't know about. Now we just need Green Bronze Luigi. The Infinite Assist Trophy glitch. This glitch is maybe the most famous SSF2 glitch of all time, even though it was passed out of the game 5 years ago. Back in 9B, if you use an assist trophy while moving, it wouldn't consume the trophy, letting you continuously spawn assist trophies forever. Very similar to that Smash Ultimate glitch where you can just have infinite assists that take up the whole entire screen. The biggest difference is that it was really easy to do in SSF2, so even the most casual players would accidentally find this glitch. It would pretty much ruin all free-for-alls or items on games, but it was kind of fun to mess around with, having like 100 different Krillins all throwing destructive discs. But yeah, this glitch ruined many games, but also is pretty famous. The secret 3DS colors. 3DS in SSF2 is one of the coolest stages in the game, as it has many Easter eggs to other real-life 3DS colors. Of course, you have the classic dark blue, light blue, red, black, white, and even pink and purple. But there are some that are actually impossible to load up in normal means. These are the secret colors for 3DS, and to actually play on these stages, you need to set your in-game tag to one of the names of the developers. These include the yellow 3DS, an orange 3DS, a green 3DS, a black and orange 3DS, the NES Color Scheme 3DS, and the limited edition Legend of Zelda Link Between Worlds 3DS. Really cool Easter eggs to the real 3DS colors, and also just cool to fans who know about these secret codes you can put in. April Fool's videos. Every year for the past 15 years or so, the SSF2 devs have made an April Fool's video or gag of some kind, so I want to highlight some of my favorite ones, as well as a very creepy and ominous Easter egg that was left in one of them. In 2014, they announced Mr. Incredible returning to Super Smash Bros. 2, obviously didn't happen sadly. In 2016, they announced Sandbag would be a playable fighter, which actually did turn out to be real, which surprised a lot of people who thought it was actually a joke announcement. In 2017, they announced that Smashville and Final Destination would be playable stages as playable fighters, In 2018, they released a Brawl Minus style mod for Sonic called Flash Minus, which made him super overpowered, but they also did something very weird with this one. They also released another secret video with the title being a single period. This unlisted video was a loop of an ominous sandbag with two master hands looming above FD with this eerie, creepy, slowed down version of the music. I have no idea why they did this or what it was supposed to mean, but that's just all the context we have. It still remains up as an unlisted relic, and you can watch it yourself. In 2019, they did a fake reveal of a mobile game called Super Smash Bros. 2 Trophy War. In 2020, the developers made a fake trailer for a story mode called Flash of Shadows, which we'll actually touch on a little bit later in this video. In 2021, they revealed that Sandbag was getting a resprite, which actually did end up happening. In 2022, the devs revealed a fake reveal for Master Hand becoming a playable fighter. Of course, didn't happen. In 2023, they revealed that Sandbag could grab ledges. But what they actually revealed was some new footage of the Zelda resprite, the Meta Knight resprite, and the resprited Yoshi story, which as of this video releasing have still not been released, sadly. In 2024, they did a fake reveal for, I don't really know honestly, but in this quick little montage, if you look closely, there are new silhouettes for Sheik, Sonic, and Goku, which I think are actual new revealed content. Now there are a couple other April Fool's jokes that they've done, but those were the most notable ones and most interesting, and of course that 2018 one was so weird. I still feel like there's more to that one, and it could have been much lower on this list, but yeah, I just have no idea what's going on with that one. OC characters. OC characters, or more specifically, OC Sonic characters, are in fact in Super Smash Flash. Like I said before, in the original game, Greg Cloud added Blade and Blue, who were Sonic OCs. Interestingly though, these were actually not his OCs, but rather came from an old website called Kingdom Castle Animations. And both Blade and Blue were two of these OCs from that website. However, there were other OCs from the Cloud Gaming forums that were also planned to originally come to Super Smash Flash, being Azriel, the Angel of Death, and Spike Man, who's like a spiky Kirby. And all four of these characters were originally planned to come to Super Smash Bros. 2 early in the development, but were eventually scrapped when they had a large roster revamp. Regardless, they are an important part of Super Smash Bros. Development history. It is weird that we have these OC characters, but they definitely have a small cult following from players who enjoyed their edgy and unique personalities. Level 3, from this point on, if you weren't part of the core Super Smash Bros. 2 community, you probably don't know many of these. The Beta Leak. First up is the leaks. SSF2 has had so many leaks in its history, from fake leaks to actually real massive leaks. The biggest of them all was the Beta leak in 2017. Beta was the most anticipated update in the game's history, as it had been over 3 years since the last update being version 9B, and the release of this biggest update ever came kind of out of nowhere, just being dropped randomly in the end of May of 2017. There was no prior release date or announcement or even build up to this, which is because it was leaked the same week. The entire beta build was spreading through the community, all because of the actions of a few individuals and an ex-developer who I won't name in this video, but if you know, you know. And this is why the launch of beta, while pretty fun, was pretty rough around the edges and had a lot of bugs. And this is already after both Pit and Pac-Man were leaked for beta in 2016, which forced the developers to reveal both of the characters through a dev blog the following day. I remember waking up one day and just being like, oh, I guess Pit's in the game, cool. And not even counting the beta leaks, there have been so many leaks in the game's history, they really need to hire a plumber. At least one that actually does his job. Scrapped beta content. Speaking of beta, there is so much to talk about here when it comes to scrapped content in the game's development. As it was the largest update in the game's history, there was so much content that was planned or revealed and promised to the public that just never made it into the game. First up, my boy BD used to have this LSD bright costume that showed off back in 2016, and part of me wishes they still kept it in. It was really ugly, but it never ended up coming out to the public. Beta originally also included this very unique and also extremely ugly redesign of Jungle Hijinks, which was all entirely wooden, which after another resprite before the release of beta would end up being replaced with the current Jungle Hijinks, which obviously looks way better. But it wasn't just ugly things that got scrapped. Originally, a lot of stages had planned hazards that never came out to the game, notably a red Gyarados on Lake of Rage, which that stage needs so badly, and some additional hazards to help Flat Zone not fall flat. We don't know the specific changes, but from this reference image, there'd at least been this little guy right here who would fill up the gaps in the holes. Final Destination used to have this brown and blue variation, which is shown off in many of the promotional trailers for beta, and was even playable in the tester program that I was a part of, but was actually ended up being resprited again before the full release of beta. So most players have never even played on this version of FD. There's even more scrap content that I think even deserves their own place on this iceberg, such as Peril Roulette. Peril Roulette was my personal most anticipated feature for beta that just never got released. In a really old direct for SSF2 back in like 2015, they revealed this concept which essentially added modifiers to the single player classic mode to make it more difficult. It was randomized buffs or debuffs with varying strength, almost turning classic mode into a roguelike, which added a ton more replayability and also difficulty for more competitive players. I thought it was a genius idea to make single player way more fun, and it just got scrapped for some reason. I would love to see it return. I think it would just be so much more fun to play classic mode if there was at least some stakes to it. Pokemon hats. This one is just tragic. If you don't know, during one of the old developer blogs during beta's development, they revealed a lot of new costumes, and players found a secret link hidden in that dev blog that showed off an image of Pikachu and Jigglypuff with cosmetic hats. At the time, these characters had god-awful color swaps for costumes that looked very ugly, so this image showed massive improvements. But they never came out. I imagine they would have worked sort of like Kirby hats do for Kirby, where they're not perfect on all of his animations and do look a little bit janky, but they're still cool additions. Sadly, they never came to the game, and I still kind of wish they did. Shadow Moses Island. Lastly, for the cut content, we're going to talk about the cut stages. Not specifically Shadow Moses Island, but that's my personal favorite of the four. The four stages that did not make the cut to beta were Distant Planet, Shadow Moses Island, Silphco, and Skyward Voyage. Shadow Moses Island was of course my favorite, as you could actually break past the invisible wall by playing on light mode so you could jump over the walls, because unlike an Ultimate you actually can't break them in the SF2 version. But I would also argue the most disappointing cut was probably Silphco. Silphco was a super unique stage that had a layout that would change as the match went on. It had tons of moving platforms and even these unique conveyor belts which have never come up again. And in that 2015 direct, they even showed a resprited version of Silphco, which never came out. So it sucks that we lost all four of these stages, and I would say at least Shadow Moses Island and Silphco would be great to have come back in the game one day. The Key Glitch. The Key Glitch, one of my favorite moments in SSF2 history, and if you don't know, it was an extremely controversial glitch that made its first appearance in a tournament that I was hosting. In December of 2017, I held a tournament called Bowlers 2 with a small cash prize at the time, which most tournaments never ran cash prizes back then. So it brought out the best and the worst out of people. One of the best Pac-Man players named Kios entered that tournament and used a never-before glitch that allowed Pac-Man to attach his key hurtbox onto his body permanently, known as the Key Jacket, named after the Thunder Jacket in Melee, with a similar mechanic. It was super broken, and thankfully was patched out soon after that tournament, but it made that tournament incredibly controversial for everybody involved, as Kios ended up going very far, didn't actually end up winning, but did earn a cash prize using that glitch. Monty. Monty might be the most notorious Super Smash Flash 2 player who isn't a content creator or a developer. In fact, I almost want to make an entire video just dedicated to his story, because it's very fascinating and kind of insane. He was one of the most influential members of the SF2 community of all time, doing both many good deeds, such as making very high quality combo videos, and some very good training mod packs, but also had a lot of controversies such as being involved in the beta leaks. Because he was involved in those massive leaks, he was permanently banned from the game. But it didn't just end there. He ended up being permanently banned, not once, not twice, but 3 times in the game's history. However, much like Purple Guy,
I always come back.
He would always return with a new username or a new alt account. There have been well over 20 different users in the game's history that can be traced back to Monty or a Monty alt. So whether you love him or hate him, Monty is definitely one of the most influential members of the community of all time. Level 4, now we're getting to the deep cuts. Some of these are some very old pieces of trivia and just extremely niche. Flash of Shadows. So some of you may have seen that McLeod Gaming April Fool's video from 2020, which was a trailer for the in-game story mode called Flash of Shadows. But did you know Flash of Shadows was actually a real thing? It was the planned story mode for the original Super Smash Flash created by Cloud9, when the game was still in very early development. It was a very ambitious project, with a lot of material actually released for it. It was planned to be a sort of subspace emissary counterpart for Super Smash Flash, with these cool pre-rendered cutscenes interspersed with gameplay. And believe it or not, it had some lore, which I have since researched and compiled into a short retelling of the entire Flash of Shadows lore. Basically, this guy is named Umbra, and he is just as evil as he looks edgy. Umbra is described to be an entity that can control shadows, and planned to team up with all of the villains from across the different Smash Bros. Universes, such as Dr. Wily, Rayquaza, Petey Piranha, and others. From what we know, with their help, Umbra led half of an army known as the Armies of Darkness. Who led the other half? We have no idea. His half of the army was comprised of these guys called Q-bots, which we'll touch on in a minute. So the main story would follow the protagonists working together and teaming up to find and defeat Umbra and his army of Q-bots. And in this April Fool's reimagining of Flash of Shadows, Umbra got a very cool redesign, turning from this edgy guy into a blue girl who can actually turn people into assist trophies, sort of like Taboo from Brawl. Maybe they're related. Q-bots. So Q-bots were the main enemy of Flash of Shadows, sort of like those Primids from Subspace Emissary. There were three main designs being the Ninja, Warrior, and Gunner, but there were also some other official unreleased designs that I found floating around the internet, such as this Tank Q-bot and even these Elemental Q-bots. Pretty cool and never actually ended up coming out. Snake. While we're on the topic of Flash of Shadows, Snake was originally planned to be a character that was playable in the story mode. In fact, he had a whole reveal trailer for Super Smash Bros. 2 that was released before he was even added into the game. Unfortunately though, we only have this cutscene reveal, because when Flash of Shadows got thrown into the bin, Snake went with it. Which sucks because we used to have Shadow Moses Island, which was the perfect stage of course for Snake when he got added, but even that stage also got removed. Hungrybox. The top Melee Puff player Hungrybox actually played a good amount of Super Smash Flash back in the day, not once but twice on streams. He played it one time on his own stream, but also ended up making a guest appearance on the Apex 2015 booth stream, where he had this legendary moment.
Oh, that was aggressive. Look at that. Oh, look at that!
Whoa, Hungrybox showing off his skill already.
But it wasn't just Hungrybox. Tons of other Melee top players also tried the game and had some funny moments. It's nothing crazy, but it's cool to see that the official Smash Bros. Players were willing to give SSF2 a fair shot. Respawn platforms. Super Smash Bros. 2 used to have unique revival platforms for every character in the game, with about 20 different unique designs, although sadly they were scrapped from version 9A onward, which sucks to see. It's one of my favorite features from Rivals of Aether, and I think it was a cool part of the game's development history. Green Bomberman. This is a super random fun fact that I just kind of personally like, but Bomberman in SSF2 9B used to just not have a green costume. He only had the available costumes that are on screen, but he did have a secret green costume if you played Green Team Bomberman. He was the only character in the game who had a unique costume like this that could only be accessed by playing on a certain team. And yeah, I don't know, it's kind of obscure, but I thought it was cool. Beautiful Joe. Back in 2011, the character of Beautiful Joe from the series, well, Beautiful Joe, was confirmed to be an assist trophy coming to Super Smash Bros. 2. And he had plenty of screenshots and sprites that were teased on the SSF2 dojo. I don't know if anyone even watching this will recognize the name, but there used to be a Super Smash Bros. 2 YouTuber when I first started playing the game called Moi, and he was the biggest YouTuber who loved Beautiful Joe. So I remember he was extremely hyped for this edition, and it never came out. I had completely forgotten that he was ever even confirmed to be joining Super Smash Flash, and there's been no official statements ever since that first reveal back in 2011, so he's sort of just in cut content limbo. Pac-Man was leaked twice. I mentioned how Pac-Man was leaked with Pit back in 2016, but actually, Pac-Man was already leaked before that. Back at Apex 2015, a screenshot was taken of a build that showed off Isaac, Pac-Man, and an expansion character slot on the character select screen. This image spread like wildfire in the SSF2 communities, some thinking it was real, some thinking it was photoshopped, and obviously clearly it was in fact real. Pac-Man was probably the worst kept secret from the development team, as it was leaked multiple times. Moving on to Layer 5. If you were not an old school player who's really into the scene, you probably won't know any of these. Epic Face Turnip. Peach's down special in SSF2 has some pretty funny additions, such as Oddish, which is a 2% spawn rate Pokemon which you can throw that does a little bit of poison damage. But back in the day, there used to be another SSF2 specific turnip, being the Epic Face Turnip. It was a piece of its time, only being in the game during version 0.7, but it was insanely powerful. It dealt way more damage and knockback than any other turnip, including the Stitch Face, which is why it was removed. It was basically RNG if you just want to auto win the game. Roster cuts. The Super Smash Bros. 2 roster was originally planned way back early in development, and the plan was a little bit ambitious. Characters like Vegeta, Sasuke, Rock Lee, Renji, and a few others were planned for the game. However, this early planned roster had a major revamp which involved cutting basically all of the OC characters and almost all of the anime characters, being reduced to the only 4 current anime reps that we have right now. Which really sucks if you were a Rock Lee fan, but hey, at least you can still see him on Hidden Leaf Village. Renji demoted. While on the topic of roster cuts, the most tragic of them all was definitely Renji's cut in SSF2. Originally, Renji from Bleach was planned to be a playable fighter alongside Ichigo for the Bleach franchise, and after these roster cuts, he was demoted to a simple assist trophy. But sadly, his story only gets worse. He was an assist trophy up until 9B, but during the jump from 9B to Beta, he was replaced by Rukia. So if you are a Renji fan, he's just not in the game at all anymore. Sorry Renji. Wall jumps. Wall jumps are one of the most popular requests to be added to Super Smash Flash, but did you know they actually used to be in the game? Back in version 0.8b, both Sonic and Pikachu were the only characters in the game who could actually perform wall jumps, and only specifically on these walls on Central Highway and Twilight Town. It probably has to do with how they did the coding for the wall jumps, where it needs to be like certain specific walls that allow wall jumps, which is why only these 2 stages have it, since you can continuously wall jump back and forth. And it sucks that they removed wall jumps, because honestly, I think they would be super sick on Yoshi's story. Expansion characters. Expansion characters were a super ambitious project by the developers to essentially add official modding support to the game. There would have been official expansion characters which were just DLC from the developers, as well as fan-made modded expansion characters that any player could download separately, which according to the Framemakers developers was a major inspiration behind the workshop integration in Framemakers, working very similar to how expansion characters would have worked in Super Smash Flash. And this would have been revolutionary for the early 2010s, but it just didn't end up coming into fruition, and we don't really have any official modding support, but at least modding these days is somewhat supported by the developers, where back in the day it was kind of a hush-hush topic. Charge Shot Glitch. The Charge Shot Glitch, often abbreviated to CSG, was the most broken glitch in all of competitive Super Smash Flash that never got banned. Just look. That is right, your eyes are not deceiving you. By performing a bunch of grounded charge shots, you would stack the damage and knockback onto the next aerial one. It was super broken, and luckily there weren't many Samus players, so it wasn't abused as much as it could have been. But back then, even though Samus was considered a low tier, you would still see Samus win matches by pulling this off in tournament. Level 6. We're getting to the point where this is some extremely obscure trivia and just some weird things that I personally like and wanted to include. The Mars SSF2 podcast. Back in 2015, there was a Super Smash Flash 2 podcast called The Flashcast. Probably only like 10 people maybe even know what this is, but I was one of the viewers of this podcast. And believe it or not, this was the reason that I started making Super Smash Flash videos. In an old podcast episode, they got Mars, yes, that Mars, the top Ultimate player, to come onto the podcast back in 2015, as he was actually an SSF2 Black Mage player. Sadly, this episode was not archived, and I can't find it anywhere on YouTube. We were pretty bad about archiving history back then. But I remember distinctly that episode, they talked about the lack of content creators, and that was a major inspiration for me to make my first SSF2 guide. So in a way, if Mars never played SSF2, I may have never even became a Smash Flash content creator. Shirtless Marth. Shirtless Marth is exactly what it sounds like. It's Shirtless Marth. Data miners found some interesting images in the Marth files back in the day, including a very dated meme and this image of supposed Marth costumes, including Shirtless Marth. Now, we don't really know if this is an actual idea for a costume in the game or just a funny joke or Easter egg left by the developers, but it was a very funny image that went around the community back in the day. Crystal's 5th special. Back when Crystal was first revealed at Super Smash Con 2018, she had a different side special. Currently, she has her side special, Crystal Rush, which is a forward kick that bounces off opponents or can be edge cancelled for some insane movement. But back in the day, she had this. Yeah, it was terrible. This move was tentatively called Crystal Phase, and it was pretty awful. It was a mini version of Fox and Falco's side specials that gave her full invincibility, but didn't have any hitbox. So unlike Fox and Falco, there was no offensive uses for this move, and most players, including myself since I was actually at Super Smash Con 2018, I hated it, which is why the developers ended up changing it, and after Super Smash Con, it became lost media. ECSD. ECSD was an extremely cursed, very game-breaking advanced technique in version 9B that was immediately banned in all tournaments because it broke the game. ECSD stood for Edge Cancel Spot Dodge, where if you edge canceled while doing a spot dodge, you would keep the invincibility of the spot dodge while in the air. So if you perform a move before landing, you would keep the invincibility throughout the move. And if it wasn't broken enough, if you performed a move that never had to end, you could be invincible forever. It was very easy to pull off and ruined many online matches, as players could get the percent lead, perform the glitch, and then auto win the game when the time ran out. Thankfully, the glitch was not that popular or it would have ruined the online for the game. The Yoshi Discord. You might be wondering, why is the Super Smash Bros. 2 Yoshi Mains Discord on the Iceberg? Well, because it's the oldest SSF2 Discord of all time. And you know how I know that? Because I was the creator of the server. Yoshi was the least popular character in the game, and I thought it'd be funny to make a dedicated server for the 3 Yoshi players who actually played Yoshi. And it's been about 9 years since then, and we've accumulated some of the worst posts and most insane history that I've ever seen, including this post of 2 hours of Yoshi double jump cancels. It is an extremely cursed server, but it's also the mecca of Super Smash Bros. 2 history. There are so many insane moments that have happened on the server, and I'm hoping to keep it alive as long as possible. This could very well be the first Super Smash Bros. 2 server to reach 50 years of history. I mean, who knows? Hey, we'll see. Level 7. We're getting to the true mythos of Super Smash Bros. Some very serious deep cuts and things that are just extremely weird. The Super Smash Con trailer stage. The Super Smash Con trailer stage was a tiny teaser of a mysterious stage in the Crystal Reveal trailer back in 2018. And here's the clip of that teaser. Did you catch that? It's a tiny clip of the stage that doesn't actually exist in Super Smash Bros. 2. So back then, there was a lot of speculation on what that stage could have been. Probably the most likely theory is that it ended up being an early concept of Krazoa Palace, as it's a very similar floor pattern and color scheme, but the background is entirely different. The SSF2 Cypher. I may regret putting this on the Iceberg, but the SSF2 rap cypher is a real thing that happened back in 2019, and I was in it. And it had some bars.
I final smash and spit the fire. My super dragon is tired. Double jump, I fly much higher than the rate to get misfired.
I will say it's fun to look back on, but I will definitely not play any of my own parts in the cypher because it is unbelievably cringe. It is honestly something that I kind of regret, but I'm also very glad that I did because it's just an awesome part of Super Smash Bros. 2 history. If you want to hear my verse, you can go find the cypher for yourself, but you have been warned. Peach's Castle 64. Peach's Castle is of course a stage in Super Smash Bros. 2, based on the Melee version with a similar layout. But we're not talking about the Melee one. I'm talking about the Smash 64 design for Peach's Castle, which was actually found in the game files on Beta's launch. It was an unused stage that could not be accessed through normal means, but through modding you could actually access the stage and it was pretty much playable. It is still a puzzling mystery why this stage never ended up being added as an official stage. Missing No. I recently made a YouTube short talking about the mysterious case of Missing No. I'm sure most of you do know, but Missing No was a glitched placeholder Pokemon back in Pokemon Red and Blue, and it became infamous as a Pokemon urban legend associated with a lot of creepypasta theories. And as a neat reference to that piece of Pokemon trivia, it was added as an extremely rare Pokemon that could spawn in the Pokeball item. When he spawned, he would glitch out and fake a blue screen that would block all player vision for a few seconds and then return back to normal. Kind of similar to the Nintendo's assist inside the official Smash titles. And on the blue screen, it was very clear that it was a fake blue screen and just Missing No, but some players actually thought it was real back in the day, and the devs got a lot of complaints about these blue screens, and sadly they did end up removing Missing No from the game. Netflix Luffy. This blew my mind. I did not know this before making this video, but the actor who plays Luffy in the Netflix live-action version, Iñaki Godoy, did a Spanish interview where he claims that his first introduction to Luffy as a character was from Super Smash Bros. 2.
Super Smash Flash era un videojuego ahí en línea, como Smash Bros.
That is insane work. The idea that the closest thing to real-life Luffy first found out about One Piece from Super Smash Bros. 2 Luffy is just mind-blowing. It shows the impact and reach that this game had. Level 8, this is straight up Super Smash Bros. Legends. Things that almost don't seem real, but just had to be included on the iceberg. The Super Smash Bros. 2 Dojo. The Super Smash Bros. 2 Dojo is such an absolute relic of old McLeod gaming. It's gone through many variations in different forms. And before the dev blogs and update videos of the recent era of Super Smash Bros., this used to be the main source of new news for Super Smash Bros. There was tons of features and announcements that were revealed on the old dojo, some that ended up actually being put into the game, and many that didn't actually quite make it, such as coin matches. And thankfully, most of the dojo has been archived, so we can actually see many of these old announcements, like adventure mode, boss battles, and battle cards from Kingdom Hearts, which sort of worked like assist trophies, but just included characters like Jack Skellington, Genie, and Stitch. Of course, these features ended up being cut and scrapped from the game. But many of the features that did make it into Super Smash Bros. Were first revealed with their early designs on this dojo and are a massive part of Super Smash Bros. 2 history. Dark Sonic. Dark Sonic is one of my favorite moments from the early SSF2 dojo. Back when expansion characters were revealed and planned for the game, the dev team actually announced 4 expansion characters that they would be officially releasing with the edition, being Sephiroth, Roy, NES Mario, which by the way, super sick idea for a fighter, and Dark Sonic. Dark Sonic, apparently, is what happens when Super Sonic becomes enraged during transformation. And from my understanding, this is actually a canon part of the Sonic anime, and he sort of gains some kind of powers that Shadow also has. And it's just a wild sight to imagine this could have been a playable fighter in Super Smash Flash. I cannot imagine how OP he would have been. The Ice Climbers Incident. In 2015, during a Super Smash Flash 2 livestream by an old developer known as Yadad, he was streaming a work-in-progress build of Super Smash Flash 2 beta. And on that stream, when he went to the random stage selection menu, he accidentally leaked some work-in-progress stages. These stages included Lake of Rage, Butter Building, Waiting Room, Temple of Time, which was an old stage that got cut in 9A, and 2 stages that never ended up releasing, being Sky World and a stage named Ice Climbers. Sky World was a stage that we knew was inevitable to eventually be added to Super Smash Flash, and was likely transformed into Palutena's Shrine. But Ice Climbers never came out. There's some theories that this stage would have been similar to Summit from Brawl, but since there's no preview image, we have no idea. Additionally, there was an Ice Climbers logo that was also data mined from the files, but no evidence or sign of what this stage would have really been. Rosalina removed. In version 9B on the stage Galaxy Tours, Rosalina could be spotted in the background of the stage in between stage transformations. However, when the stage was brought over to beta, the observatory part of the level was removed in favor of Starship Mario, which replaced Rosalina with Lubba. And some Super Smash Flash fans speculated back in the forums that this meant that Rosalina would become a playable fighter joining the roster. Of course it didn't happen, but it was a theory running around the community at the time. Jack. What I believe is the French pronunciation of Jack is, according to Steven, who is one of the Super Smash Flash 2 developers, the official name of the brown costume of Sandbag. Why? Because why not? There's plenty of random SSF2 lore. For some additional lore, according to the developers, Sandbag and Bandana D are best friends, and the Pichu from the Pokeball is the younger brother of the playable Pichu. Take this information how you will, but according to the developers, it is canon. We have finally reached it, the final layer. What remains of Super Smash Flash 2 lore? Horse Racers. Horse Racers refers to the fairly unknown past history of Greg McLeod, the creator of Super Smash Flash. Before he became a Flash game developer, he was a graphing calculator game creator. That's right, he made games on calculators. I guess he has a history of making games he can play in schools. He ended up creating 29 different programs in the early 2000s and released them on McLeod Gaming. This one you're watching right here is called Horse Racers, which basically functioned like a Mario Party style minigame in which you bet on a horse, which are these symbols, and they would race to the finish, and you would win if you picked the correct one. It's pretty cool to see the humble beginnings of the creator of Super Smash Flash 2. Hotline Bling. Hotline Bling, the song by controversial artist Drake, was part of Super Smash Flash 2's original soundtrack. Yes, seriously, while technically not accessible in the game, the song Hotline Bling was actually found in the game files on beta's launch, purposely left by the developers as an Easter egg to troll the modders and data miners who had been leaking actual reveals for years. So yes, Hotline Bling is a part of Super Smash Flash 2. Gligar replacing Jigglypuff. Gligar was added as a Pokeball summon in Super Smash Flash 2, but his history with SSF2 goes way further back. In January of 2010, a rumor started circulating on the McLeod Gaming forums that the developers actually planned to cut Jigglypuff from the roster in favor of making Gligar a playable fighter. And the rumor did gain some traction as images of the Gligar sprite were spreading around. Later on, the devs would confirm that this was a trick that they were pulling on the community and had no real intentions of making the swap. But they would reference this in future posts, saying Jigglypuff needed to watch out around Gligar. Wait, what? Cloudbot was originally designed to be an AI assistant to help in the development of Super Smash Flash 2, but things would change on April 1st of 2016. What was supposed to be a normal dev blog covering brand new costumes was hijacked by the AI assistant, who had grown sentient and resented being forced to work on a Flash game for years. Taking matters into his own hands, he hacked the McLeod Gaming website, and in later found footage, it was discovered that the Cloudbot virus uploaded itself into Super Smash Flash, and there, he transferred his sentience into the lifeless Sandbag on Waiting Room, having taken control of a new physical form to find and seek vengeance on the developers. And although the devs claim to have gotten rid of all traces of Cloudbot, some say that during certain times of the year, if you look closely, you'll see the truth. So yeah, Cloudbot is sort of a running Herobrine equivalent joke for Super Smash Flash 2, and I thought it was a fun way to end the iceberg. So that concludes our journey through Super Smash Flash 2's development, lore, and trivia. There were a few additional things that I debated putting on here, like Diddy Kong, but for the sake of not being too repetitive, I think I hit most of the big ones. That being said, if there's anything you think that deserves to be on here that I missed, let me know in the comments below. It's been literally years since my last Super Smash Flash video, so I hope maybe it was worth the wait. To be fully transparent, I've been extremely demotivated to make Smash Flash content, but this video was the first one in a while that I actually really enjoyed making. So yeah, I really do hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks for watching.